Hi, I'm Joy Fennick, and I'm going to be talking to you about the influence that the year 1914 had on the art movement of the 20th century. The most prolific of the event of 1914 was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand by the Black Hand, which sparked World War I. The start of World War I ignited the minds on all sides, and countless inventions were created to support the war effort. The specific invention in 1914 was the creation of hydrophones by the British, American, and combined power of the French scientists. Hydrophones were used to locate submarines and icebergs from ships. As imagined, this innovation was extremely important in combating the emergence of submarine warfare and the use of U-boats. The magnitude of the war heavily influenced the art at the time, as many pieces drew inspiration from the war efforts. The influence carried through all art forms: painting, sculptures, photography, etc. In 1914, artist David Bomberg painted The Mud Bath, one of his most famous pieces, which headed the movement of Vorticism. Vorticism was a short-lived movement that was an influence on a later movement of Cubism. Cubism removed the element of perspective and made use of geometric shapes and bright colors, made famous by the artist Pablo Picasso. This movement was one of the first avant-garde movements in Europe, which paved the way for other movements that changed the art scene. As I talked about earlier, the influence that the war had through the 20th century was massive. This limestone sculpture, named the Fountain of Company H, was a war memorial designed by John H. Beaver that is located in Portland, Oregon. Although World War I had just begun, this war memorial was not created on account of the major war. This sculpture was dedicated to the 2nd Oregon Volunteer Infantry Regiment, who were killed in the line of fire in the Philippine-American War. One of the most famous architects during this time was Frank Lloyd Wright, who innovated the field. He created many new techniques and aesthetics in the field of architecture. He designed buildings that felt right. What I mean by this is he took into account the environment that surrounded it and created harmony. This was known as organic architecture and had only grown in popularity since its birth, and has heavily influenced the art of architecture and interior design. On one of his jobs, he became acquainted with the wife of a man who had hired him. They ended up running away together, and Frank Lloyd Wright designed this home, which he labeled the Love Cottage, where they could live together. However, tragedy struck in 1914 when Frank Lloyd Wright was away working on a project. One of his workers purposely set his home ablaze, killing his mistress. Through his sorrows, Wright rebuilt part of the home by the end of the year, but quickly moved on as he eventually wed one of the women who wrote him a condolence letter.